So, we have ourselves being able to have a timer and have some random numbers appear, and we have the place where we could put the answer, but we have no way to return if this answer is true or false yet. Well, I guess this is where we go into nested if statements. So, remember how we could have an if statement inside an if statement inside an if statement from last time? Well, we can do the same thing here. Now, I personally don't like the idea of just having this giant long thing all on my timer, because we're going to need to figure out a way to return the answers as true or false. Instead of having it do all the math every single tick, we could just have it do it in a separate section. So I'm just going to make a new area, and I'm going to call it check answer. Now, check answers doesn't exist yet, obviously. So, I'm going to have to make a place called check the answers. Isn't that right? Yep, so now in this case, I want a public, not a private. I want a public sub. Actually, no, I want a public function. And I'm going to name it check answers. And I'm going to move this if statement over here because I want to return a few things from this. And I'm going to return I'm going to return a few things. So, actually no, I don't want that moved over there. Never mind, ignore that. Instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if I'm going to do add 1 plus add 2 equals, and I named my number up down nud add just to make sure I could sense it. Then return true. Else return false. So, this is a Boolean. It is either returning true or returning false. And it's going to return it because this is the guy that used it, so it's going to return it back to this. Hence why it's a public function and not a private sub. It's going to send information back to it. Remember how I said we need to know the difference between that? Nud add dot value. There we go. Yeah, so it's not the text. These guys don't have a text. They have a value. They're a number. So if this random number plus this random number equals the number we have here, then it will return true. So if this is equal to that, then it will return true. So let's just test this guy out. So if how am I going to make that return true? Let me think for a second here. Oh, I know how. If check answers equals true, then I will go and stop my timer. I'll enable those guys back up, but I'll also put up a little message box that says MSG box, you win. There we go. We'll just put that and put it like that. So, in theory, once this guy over here, once this public function all the way over here outside of this sub, once this guy returns true, then we'll have this happen to us. So 3 plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. You win. Okay. And obviously the timer has stopped. And then we'll reset. 2 plus 7. 2 plus 7 is 8. you win. So on and so forth. Now, obviously, we have two if statements here, and they're both kinda, we don't really want to have this and this happen at the same time. So they really shouldn't be two separate if statements. Instead, what we should have is we should have ourselves an else if. Whoops, come on. There we go. Else if time remaining equals 0. So if, and I'll cut and paste that over there. And now we won't need this guy right there either, because now it'll do this if this happens, and if this happens, it'll skip this part, because this is true. An if statement will do the first correct answer. So if this is not true, then it will go on to check if this is true. However, if this is true, then it will skip this part entirely, because it's already found one correct answer, and an if statement will always stop at the first correct answer. Which is why you don't want to have multiple ifs if they're in conflicting things. And of course, I'll do a else as well. So else, there we go. I'll just move that over there as well. And now, so if your time remaining is z equal to 0, we're going to stop it. If your answer is correct, we're going to stop it. However, if your answers are not correct, and your time still does not equal 0, then all other results must be, and then it's obviously greater than 0. If you really wanted to, you could even do an else if here, and go with time remaining is greater than 0, which will get the same thing. But I'm just going to keep it as a simple else here, because else will be all other results. So all other results besides being correct or running out of time will make the timer go down. And we can even test this out. So now start quiz. 7 plus 7, obviously, is 14. And we win. So I'll start the quiz again. I don't have the correct answer because it's not 3. 2 plus 1 does not equal 14. I haven't run out of time yet, so my timer is still running down. Now, once my timer runs out, in theory, the question should, pop back up. And, this button will freeze, among other things. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And the button re-enabled, the timer stopped, so on and so forth. So it works as intended. Now, with that being said, obviously, there's a little bit of a difference between what I showed you at the start of this lecture and where we're at now. Because right now, we also have to have, once we get 0, well, let's show it the true answer. So, if I were to have how would I do that? Well, what's the name of this guy? And what am I getting? I'm getting its text, right? So I'm going to have to get this guy, which I named nudadd, and I'm going to have to figure out what these two numbers are and add it to it. So, if my time remaining equals 0, first off, let's put a message box in that says, you lose, or something. You lose, and then of course, let me go into nudadd dot value is going to equal whatever add1 plus add2 was. So now, in theory, when I run out of time in 30 seconds, it'll think about it. So in theory, this guy should pop up as 11 right here after I have a message box that says I lost. and another 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And time says you lose, okay. And look, the 11 popped up. I didn't even have to touch my little arrows, because it gave me the correct answer of what it should be. Now, the reason why I do this is because once you get into multiplication or division, really just division, because anything with fractions or decimal points, the computer will try to round it, or it might go one above, one below. It's going to give you some weird, funky errors. So, it's a good thing to always have this where it tells you what the answer is if you lose, so you can tell if your logic error is wrong, if your logic is correct or not, if you're adding or subtracting the correct things, that sort of stuff. This is your failsafe. This is, putting the answer in a label if you need to. So, as you can see, we've done a lot of code, and we've made one function and another function, start the quiz. We've made two things out of nothing. Out of absolutely nothing. And that's a lot of code for what is admittedly a very simple looking process. So, remember how I keep telling you guys that, you probably want to comment your code? This is why. This is how big codes can get. And we're not even done yet. We are just at the point of this half of the project. So, make sure you're giving yourself comments that you know and you understand what it is you're doing in every part of these codes, so that you don't get lost. You don't forget what you name these things. You don't forget what each part is doing. That's also why proper naming conventions will make sense. What am I doing at this part? I'm doing the stuff that happens at the start of the quiz. What am I doing right here? I'm checking my answers, so on and so forth. This is why you need to name things correctly and comment your code, so that you can follow it and not get lost. So, I think this is a good part to wrap up. So, save all of this and zip it all together and put it through Moodle. This'll be where we stop off this week. Now, come next week, we're going to go with subtraction, multiplication, and division. We're going to add those three next week.